For the first time in his poll campaign, the Prime Minister today targeting the Mahagathbandhan's chief ministerial face and RJD leader Tejashwi Yadav, calling him Jungle Raj ka Yuvraj, reminding the voters of Bihar of the rule of Lalu Yadav and Rabri. The Prime Minister declared that voting for the opposition will make the state Bimar again. But with nearly 25% of the electorate in Bihar being under the age of 30, will invoking memories of Jungle Raj really work for the NDA? Is this going to be seen by voters as a battle between Ram Raj being promised by the Prime Minister on the one side and the supposed Jungle Raj that Tejashwi could bring on the other? Here is our lead story tonight.
Massacres, musclemen, militias. In the race to power in Bihar, Lalu Yadav Jr. is haunted by what was widely believed to be a nexus between politicians, bureaucrats and criminal gangs when his parents governed the state.
मैं मानता हूं ये जंगल राज के युवराज से बिहार की जनता पुराना ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड के आधार पर और क्या अपेक्षा कर सकती है। जंगल राज की परंपरा में सब कुछ सीखने वाले लोगों को मुझसे ज्यादा अच्छी तरह बिहार की जनता जानती है।
The term Jungle Raj, notoriously linked to the Lalu Rabri rule, makes a roaring comeback.
आपका जैसे मास्क पहनने से 2 गज की दूरी रखने से आप अपने और अपने परिवार को बीमारी से बचा सकते हैं, वैसे ही आप अपने एक वोट से बिहार को बीमार बनाने से बचा सकते हैं।
As Bihar began to vote, the Prime Minister evoked memories of crime and corruption that beset the RJD rule before Nitish Kumar took over 15 years ago. Official data shows violent crime and kidnappings have come down over the past decade and a half.
The alleged Jungle Raj happened more than 15 years ago. But this election is happening on the heels of twin crises that struck Bihar and its people hard. The migrant exodus in virus lockdown and the devastating floods. Both these events fly in the face of Nitish Kumar's good governance model. And then there is anti-incumbent sentiments.
The opposition led by the young RJD leader has made unemployment its main poll plank. Joblessness is writ large on Bihar's job market. Official data suggests unemployment is not a post-pandemic phenomenon. Jobs in Bihar continued to disappear even more than a year before the coronavirus had struck.
आप लोग बताओ 15 साल में नीतीश जी रोजगार दिए, कारखाना लगाए, पलायन रोके, गरीबी मिटाए, किसानों के लिए सिंचाई का व्यवस्था कराए। तो आप बताओ, जिसको रोजगार था उसको भी मोदी जी ने छीन लिया, नीतीश जी ने छीन लिया। नीतीश जी आप थक चुके हो, आपसे बिहार संभलने वाला नहीं है।
A state stretched thin under the pressure of a terrible record of law and order from the past and from a long-drawn quest for livelihood over to voters to decide Bihar's future. With Anand Patel, Bureau Report, India Today.
The threat of the return of Jungle Raj is a worst-case scenario for the voters of Bihar, especially the older generation. But the reality in this election is 1/4 of the voters are under the age of 30. They haven't felt Jungle Raj. They've seen the pandemic, they've seen the migration, they're seeing the employment numbers, they see their own condition. Will this attack connect? His speech today very different from the first set of speeches we saw on Prime Minister's first day of campaigning. Joining us to discuss the first phase of voting and the current state of play in the battle for Bihar, I want to welcome first and foremost, representing the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, its spokesperson Sambit Patra squaring off against him, representing the Congress, its media chief Pawan Khera. With us on this broadcast for a perspective from the RJD, we've got Dr. Naval Kishore. Two leading psephologists join us. Yashwant Deshmukh is doing his rounds of polling, the tracking data. Hopefully he can give us some insights without running afoul with what the Election Commission allows. And we've got Sanjay Kumar, who comes from Bihar and understands the ins and outs of the politics of the state. Dr. Patra, to you first. We saw a very different kind of approach. The first day was more about Article 370. This time round, the Prime Minister reminding voters of the threat of Jungle Raj, saying if Tejashwi Yadav, the prince of Jungle Raj, were to come to power, Bihar will become Bimar. Now, two things happened. One, the Prime Minister having to take cognizance of his young opponent. Usually, when the BJP feels that they're winning easy, the Prime Minister doesn't often need to do that. So he's had to take cognizance of young Tejashwi, the kind of crowds that rally is drawing. Secondly, he's reminding people of Jungle Raj. My question to you is this. When 1/4 of the voters haven't seen Jungle Raj, how confident are you that the memories of Jungle Raj are so strong that they will connect, they will trouble voters and they will make them vote towards the NDA? Sambit Patra.
Rahul, first and foremost, I'm thankful to you that today in the panel, in this August panel, we have two psephologists. Both of them are good friend of mine. We have Yashwant ji and we have Sanjay ji. And both of them have conducted opinion polls as far as Bihar elections are concerned, one for your channel and the other for the other channel. So in fact, both of them have answered the question that you have asked me as to how confident we are. Since scientifically, data-wise, they have projected figures showing that Bharatiya Janata Party JDU alliance is comfortably winning this election. I further leave this discussion as far as the vote share, scientific alignment, etc. is concerned to them. So I answer the question that we are winning as per your own opinion poll, and two psephologists are here. As far as reminiscence of the past are concerned, whether people, 1/4 of people in fact in the state do not know what Jungle Raj is because their age did not have them at that time period. So in fact, none of us in the panel today were during the British Raj, but still we know about British Raj. We speak against the atrocities committed by the Britishers, and we are aware about the atrocities of the generals, General Dyers, etc. Then why? Because of stories which have passed from years altogether. Since time immemorial, these have been part of our memory. As far as Jungle Raj is concerned, it's only 15 years ago. Most of us remember what Jungle Raj is. We have been told by our family. For my case, in fact, I was in Bihar then. Yes, I was a kid then. I do not remember what Jungle Raj was. But then we all in the family knew that kidnapping, rangdari and murder, arson, these were common things. We all, Sahabuddin was a terror. We all knew of who Sadhu Yadav was. We knew of S2, Sadhu Yadav and Subhash Yadav, who they were. We knew of the Ranveer Sena and MCC clashes. We knew of the caste clashes. We knew about if you were a doctor or if you were an engineer during those period, and if you bought a Maruti 800 car, then you have to give some amount of rangdari. And if you were not lucky enough or not fortunate enough, you would be kidnapped and you had to pay a handsome amount as ransom, or you would be killed or murdered. So these things are fresh in the memory. And let me conclude by saying that we have been saying that RJD is Rojana Jungle Raj ka dar. RJD Rojana Jungle Raj ka dar.
Pawan Khera, a majority of the voters in this country didn't live through the emergency, most certainly weren't around during the British rule. It doesn't mean that they've forgotten what the horrors of that period were like. Rozana Jungle Raj ka dar. That is Sambit Patra's play. Will Jungle Raj and the threat of Jungle Raj returning prove to be the Achilles heel of the Mahagathbandhan? Pawan Khera.
Rahul, the very fact that the Prime Minister has to resort to going back to 15 years ago without referring to his own data, without reading the Niti Aayog report, without reading the NCRB report. I have the data with me. I will just read it out to you. Without that, he knows he's on a weak wicket. He knows he cannot have any answers on the front of unemployment, on the economy, on rapid deindustrialization of the state, on the horrible state that Bihar has been in over the last 15 years. Why do they talk about Jungle Raj when there is a Maha-Jungle Raj going on with kidnappings of children up by, not me, it's NCRB. Yesterday we did a press conference, 8,697%. Kidnappings of women up by 733%. Heinous crimes up by 87%. Attempted murders up by 140%. What are they talking about? What are they talking about? आपके पास unemployment पे जवाब नहीं है, आपके पास नौकरी देने का कोई संभावनाएं ही नहीं है. After 15 years of their rule, today the Prime Minister talks about IT hub की संभावनाएं तलाश रहे हैं. अभी तक आप संभावनाएं तलाश रहे हैं. 15 साल में संभावनाएं तलाश रहे हैं.
Sambit Patra, when the Prime Minister talks about an IT hub coming to Bihar, you know, the opposition says, but hey, you've been in power for the last 6 years. What have you done so far? Which is why Tejashwi argues again and again that he won't talk about jobs because he's failed to provide you with employment. Therefore, they're going back to my father's time. I am not my father. I'll run a different kind of government. Sambit Patra.
So number one, as far as Tejashwi Yadav trying to run away from his dynastic past is concerned, that itself speaks volumes. Remember, there are no pictures of Lalu Prasad Yadav or Rabdi Devi ji in any of the posters that the RJD is putting up. So it means, and in fact, Mr. Tejashwi Yadav is trying his best to distance himself from his family's past. So they agree to the fact that the family cannot give them vote, number one. Number two, as far as data is concerned, that what we had done and versus what they had done, I have the data, but that would consume a lot of time. I would simply say that as far as the GDP of the state during Lalu's Raj was concerned, it was approximately 3%, which has gone up to approximately 11.5 odd percentage today. So there has been a huge jump. Similarly, the per capita income also has gone up. During the Lalu's time, it was 8,000 per capita per person, and it has gone up to 42 to 45,000 rupees per person in Bihar today. There has been a jump. And since we are talking about this Gunda Raj, the Jungle Raj, etc., let me remind you of the fact. See, as far as Shahabuddin and others are concerned, as far as the caste clashes are concerned, it is something which Bihar has been notoriously known during Lalu's regime. And ironically, the Congress party right now was saying that kidnappings were less during Lalu's period. It is more during the Nitish's period. Let me just conclude by saying during 1992 to 2004, the total number of reported kidnapping, remember reported kidnapping, was 32,085. Total number of murders in just 5 years, 2001 and 2005, was 20,000. 20,000 murders in just 5 years. And remember why the Prime Minister speaks about Yuvraj. The Prime Minister always speaks against nepotism and dynastic politics. It's not because your opponent is strong. It is not because Rahul Gandhi was strong that the Prime Minister called him Yuvraj back then in 2014 and 13. Remember, he did so because Prime Minister opposes nepotism to the hilt.
Okay, Naval Kishore, is this the RJD's weak link? The fact that voters are scared that if Tejashwi Yadav, and more importantly, everything that accompanies Tejashwi Yadav comes back to power, Bihar will become Bimar again. That's what the Prime Minister's message to the state of Bihar is. And there is a certain section of voters who in 2010 and 2005 have voted against Jungle Raj.
You know, the popularity of Tejashwi Yadav is recognized when Amit Shah, Nitish Kumar, JP Nadda and Narendra Modi is speaking against him. So you can realize they have seen on the ground also, he connects with the youth of Bihar on the issues. He is not trying to divide on communal on any other issue. He is trying to connect with the people on the issues. And what is the issue? The issue is employment, good education, bringing industries, migration, finishing migration, the improving health infrastructure and education. And this is appealing to the people of Bihar and particularly the youth. That is the problem which is haunting these people, and they are forced to go back to study history. And I'm sure Sambit Patra is a bad student of comparison. If you want to compare, you read comparison of Niti Ayog, who has compared all the state of the contemporary times, and that is the best way to compare. Don't compare Bihar of 2020 and Bihar of 25.
But Naval Kishore,
that will not make sense.
No, but Dr. Naval Kishore, you know, it's not such a special thing that Tejashwi Yadav is being taken cognizance of by all the opposition leaders. He is the chief ministerial face of the Mahagathbandhan. Who else will they speak about? They will very naturally speak about whoever is opposing them, and that man happens to be Tejashwi Yadav. You aren't answering my basic question. My basic question is this. The fear of RJD and everything that accompanies the RJD taking Bihar into a state of chaos is a very real fear. Has the RJD learnt lessons from the past? How will a government of Tejashwi Yadav, if the people of Bihar were to give you a chance, be different from that run by his father? Answer the specific question, sir.
No, he has already said that the success of his father, Lalu Yadav, between 1990 and 2005 was on the issue of social development and political empowerment. That nobody can deny. On the economic issue, he could not. But you can refer to UPA 1 as a railway minister. He gave railway 1 lakh crores of benefit, and that is recognized by everyone. He worked for the people, poor people of India by bringing Garib Rath, by connecting coolies. Or bringing up this employment system, all these things were recognized.
No, but you aren't answering my question, Dr. Kishore. No, Dr. Kishore. Jungle Raj was a reality of the Lalu Rabdi reign. You aren't answering my specific question. How do voters know, how do our viewers know that if the RJD in Congress were to get a chance, you will not repeat what happened during Lalu Prasad Yadav's watch?
See, the reality is that it was portrayed, and if there was something the people of Bihar have given us, had put us out of power for 15 years. If at all that is true, it is not true. It is portrayed. Everyone knows that. It is consistently portrayed by the anti-RJD and BJP people that it was a jungle raj. But what could be more jungle raj than Muzzafarpur Sultan or Murad case? What can be the biggest scam than Srijan? Prime Minister himself in 2015 said there are 33 scams under Nitish government. 27 has added. There are 60 scams on record today, and it amounts to 30,000 crore. Who do not know this? It is on record. So that is not a problem. The problem is the rising popularity of Nitish Kumar, Tejashwi Yadav versus declining popularity of Nitish Kumar. And all polls have recognized that there is a rise in popularity of
you made a
Yadav
slip of tongue, but you've given your opponent a bouncer, which I'm sure he wants to hit out of the park. But the question... Okay, it's a slip of tongue. Sambit Patra, before you pounce on Nawal Kishore, this is the first time he's come on our show. He's already saying it's a slip of tongue. But, you know, here's the reality. Tejashwi Yadav in this campaign is saying something very smart. And I want viewers to hear this carefully. He says, my father gave you samajik nyay, social justice. I will give you economic justice, arthik nyay. And that's a powerful idea, that I am not my father. This campaign or my government will be different from that of my father. That was a different time. That was about social justice, the lower caste rising against the upper caste. This is about employment, and the problem of unemployment is hurting everyone equally. Sambit Patra.
See, as far as Tejashwi's promises are concerned, remember, credibility is one of the most important things which is attached to a leader. And the second most important thing attached to a leader is the sense of the perception of the leader. Both are against Tejashwi. Credibility of Tejashwi, he doesn't have the experience of a matured leader. He has not gifted the people of Bihar as yet with anything, despite the fact that for a short span of time, he was the deputy chief minister. And during that tenure, when he was the deputy chief minister and his brother was the health minister, there was chaos. Remember, even then we had videos, etc. coming out when there was utter chaos. So he cannot distance himself from that. As far as perception is concerned, it may be 15 years ago we had Jungle Raj.
Okay, no, one second. Nawal Kishore, that's not the way we run debates.
Just a second,
when you were speaking, Sambit Patra was listening to you patiently. Allow him the same courtesy. I will come back to you. We don't want any Jungle Raj on our show, please. Yes, Dr. Patra.
See, as far as the reminiscence of Jungle Raj 15 years ago is concerned, people don't have to revisit what happened 15 years ago. They have a living example of Lalu Prasad Yadav behind bars today, and that everyone knows. Lalu Prasad Yadav, if you ask in a common simile, a colloquial language as to what is the Paryayavachi Shabd, a synonym of corruption, they would say Lalu Prasad Yadav is the synonym of corruption. So this is something which we don't have to remind people of. So in fact, however hard Tejashwi Yadav or his family may try to shrug off the shed of Jungle Raj. What is Jungle Raj actually? Jungle Raj is the organized syndicate of crime, corruption, and that's between the politicians, businessmen, bureaucrats and the criminals.
Okay.
This is what Jungle Raj is.
And whether the Mahagathbandhan likes it or not, Jungle Raj was a reality of the Lalu Rabdi reign, and it is of immense concern to people across Bihar that if the RJD were to come back, Tejashwi may not symbolize Jungle Raj, but everyone around him, the cadre, the party workers, the vote bank is still the same. There was Jungle Raj last time. How does anyone know that there won't be Jungle Raj this time?
Rahul, if crime goes up by 150% overall crime, why do you keep saying that was Jungle Raj and this is not worse? 1,07,664 registered crimes during the 15 years of Lalu Yadav, 2,69,109 crimes under him, under Nitish Babu. So why do you keep repeating Jungle Raj without referring to the Mahajangal Raj today? And Sambit Patra says that because there are charges of corruption on Lalu Yadav, therefore there was Jungle Raj. What is happening in Uttarakhand? High Court said there are charges of corruption against the Chief Minister. Would you come on record and say that Uttarakhand has a Jungle Raj under BJP rule today? So stop this rhetoric of Jungle Raj where data suggests something completely different. And see the kind of enthusiasm with which women today voted. We could see the change they want. They desperately want the youth, the women. Everybody is voting for jobs. For God's sake, they want to look at the future and they don't want to keep talking about the past.
Okay,
so that's the problem with the Modi ecosystem. 70 साल, 15 साल, 15 साल. अरे आगे की बात करिए ना. आपका क्या भविष्य का क्या road map है? बताइए.
Between the problems of the past and a vision for the future, this is where I want to go across to our two pollsters. I'll start with Yashwant Deshmukh. We've heard the netas, Yashwant. What's the sense that you're picking up after the first phase of polling? Is this a battle between the caste arithmetic of the NDA versus the chemistry of Tejashwi Yadav? How do you read the state of play after the first phase? Let's start with Yashwant Deshmukh.
Well, Rahul, I am privy to the data which I cannot discuss right now, as you know, that would be not the right thing to do, but I will certainly talk about the data that we have been talking for the last 6 months now. And that is something which is like, which my politician friends generally always adopt a policy of pick and choose in that way, which works them well. Sambit has certainly picked up the prediction part of what the CSDF people is saying. But in the tracker poll, what I would like to remind him is that, for week after week, day after day, we have been speaking on the top of our voice that I haven't figured out if there was any other chief minister carrying this much of anger against him in such a short period of time, flipping it over all the goodwill that goes on the top. So, Bihar tracker data all along last 6 months have been showing people are angry.
Okay, give me a moment. That audio line with Yashwant's not right. Let's just try and fix it. Yashwant, give us a moment. We'll fix that audio line and come back to you. Sanjay Kumar, Yashwant Deshmukh making an important point that the level of anti-incumbency seen against Nitish Kumar is higher than anti-incumbency we've seen in other state elections, and therefore if it were a straight fight, Nitish Kumar was a goner. The fact that the NDA is still in the fight, what are you making of this, and what is your reading of the way the first phase of polling went?
Rahul, I agree that the level of anti-incumbency against Nitish Kumar is not higher compared to other states, but if I compare with the level of anti-incumbency which we witnessed in 2015 or 2010, even then level of anti-incumbency against Nitish Kumar is higher. But still, the poll which we put out on your channel indicated that still NDA is ahead by about 6% vote over RJD Gathbandhan. Is I think only because this one factor, anti-incumbency, is largely against Nitish Kumar as the chief minister. The anger against the government is not that much. The work of the government have been appreciated very well. In a sense, if I cite the issues on which there is a positive appraisal of the government, it is road, it is electricity, it is law and order. Yes, there are issues, other issues on which there is a negative rating of the government, especially on corruption, public health and school. So it is balancing out, but why still NDA seems to be ahead? Because BJP is a partner And if you look at the electoral history of the state for the last 30 years, there are three big political parties in Bihar in terms of their electoral strength: BJP, RJD and JDU. Whichever two parties form the alliance, they have a better chance of winning this election. That is why, in spite of all the unhappiness with Nitish Kumar, I still believe that NDA is ahead over RJD alliance.
Okay, Yashwant Deshmukh, what's your reading of the state of play after phase 1?
Well, Rahul, as you know, I am privy to some data that we are conducting in the field, so I wouldn't be commenting directly on that, but I'm absolutely free to comment on the data that for the last 6 months we have been talking about in our tracker on a daily basis. You know, I have said this in no uncertain term that the Chief Minister's, the anger against Chief Minister has been all-time high. Anger against sitting MPs, against the sitting MLAs, everywhere. Huge anti-incumbent sentiments are visible in our tracker data. The only place where they were still satisfied or they were not upset with was the case of popularity of the Prime Minister. So let's not go in that direction to see that everything was good and nice and pink of health as far as the ratings of the state governments was concerned. Certainly, the COVID issue did play a lot of role in that, the reverse migration and everything. But having said that, it's very clear to me that if there was any other state, Rahul, looking at the data just like that, I would have said this state is going for a change, heading for a huge anti-incumbent verdict, if it was not for Bihar. But in Bihar, as we always say, the arithmetic precedes the chemistry, what Sanjay bhai just said. That chemistry बिगड़ी हुई है इनकी, जो अंक गणित है, जो बचा ले जाए, वो जितना भी बचा ले जाए.
Pawan Khera, respond to that. That, you know, if this is arithmetic versus chemistry in Bihar in elections in the past, voters have tended to put caste arithmetic ahead of chemistry. If this was just about chemistry, possibly the Gathbandhan would have swept. But because the JDU and the BJP together form such a formidable caste coalition, that still gives the NDA the edge, feels Yashwant Deshmukh. Respond to that.
Rahul, I am not an expert psychologist like Yashwant and Sanjay ji yet. What I watched over the last 20 days in Bihar is that youth and women are breaking all caste barriers in Bihar. They are voting on one major issue of employment. That is surprising to all of us also, that because going by psychologists, yes, there is a major factor of caste in elections here, but I don't see that when it comes to the youth and women. And today also, the kind of enthusiasm you saw were mostly amongst these two categories of youth and women. So I absolutely don't agree.
Sanjay Kumar, do you buy that? Let's deal with the youth vote first. Are younger voters, in your view and through all your study and fieldwork, less caste-driven than their older generation? Or do you think that's a misnomer, at least from what we've seen so far in past elections?
In the past election, I think 2014 Lok Sabha election is the watershed. That's the point where things started changing. Before 2014 election, and I'm referring to the Lok Sabha election, all the Lok Sabha elections beginning 1996 witnessed a lower turnout among the young voter, and their votes were as divided as votes of other age group, and those votes were divided on various other considerations. So there was no difference between the voting preference of the young voter vis-a-vis the voting preference of the elderly, and this applies to most of the states.
But you made a very important point. You made an important point about 2014, Sambit Patra. It worked for you in your favor when Prime Minister Modi was on the ticket for the Lok Sabha elections. And then if young voters transcended caste, there is no guarantee that that same phenomena can't see a reverse swing and it could work against you and your coalition in Bihar.
See, let me answer it in mathematics. In fact, two of the cephalogists were right in pointing out that arithmetic is extremely important as far as Bihar is concerned. If you would see the 2014 election, if you would see the 2015 election, and if you would see the 2019 election, you would find that as far as RJD and the other combinations, the Mahagathbandhan is concerned, the best case scenario in them is, the vote percentage scenario is 15 to 26%. As far as BJP, JDU combined is concerned, it swings between 40 to 46%. So the arithmetic always favors the JDU BJP combined as far as the last 3 elections are concerned. 15 to 26% versus 40 to 46%, number one. How it converts into seat is an issue which the cephalologists would be answering. Number two, see, we were talking about all these polls. Remember the CSDS Lokniti poll which you showed was, if I remember correctly, between the 10th and 17th of this month. Prime Minister descended on the ground onto the arena in Bihar thereafter. So, of course, we have seen in the last elections that once the Prime Minister descends on ground, he adds a certain percentage of votes, 8 to 10% of votes, he adds to the kitty. So, I'm adding to the kitty.
But that's a double-edged sword, Dr. Patra. Please be very careful of what you say, because you're saying he's my Sachin Tendulkar, ye jitayega. And if for some reason that 8 to 10% bump that you're talking about doesn't materialize, then when you come back on Newstrack, Pawan Khera is going to have a go at you. Say you said he'll get you 8 to 10% up. What if it goes down? No, you're really setting him up in a dangerous position, given everything that's happening.
I'll just complete. Anyways, they're not going to. They have never spared the Prime Minister, and they will never spare the Prime Minister. Even if there is an earthquake in Honolulu, they will say that Modi is responsible for it. Anyways, on a serious note, 2 quick points. Number one, remember Gaya, Sasharam have gone into election. This belt that has gone into election today, in fact, is the belt known for Naxalism. यहाँ पर एक term चलता था 6 इंच छोटा कर देना. 6 इंच छोटा कर देना इतना famous था कि आपको हम 6 इंच छोटा कर देंगे means we'll behead you. And today, in fact, when the resonance, we are discussing about Jungle Raj, this term, 6 इंच छोटा करना, जहां से आपकी ये CPIM और ये जो मार्क्सवादी पार्टी लड़ रही है, ये बिहार की राजनीति के लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है और ये रेजोनेट करता है. And I'll ultimately end, since Pawan has said that women voters have a huge turnout today. Let me tell you, as far as women are concerned, they are voting on 2 issues. Number one, the prohibition order that Nitish Kumar came out. He had promised last time that I would be prohibiting alcohol. He had prohibited that. Number two, women are voting on Modi's plank. Remember, more the women, merrier it is for the Bharatiya Janata Party, because women are the ones who have been benefited most by Mr. Modi's model of development.
Okay, Yashwant Deshmukh, let's talk for a moment about what Sambit Patra says. Sambit Patra's estimate is that the Prime Minister's entry raises his coalition's vote share by 8 to 10%. That Modi has a bump, positive bump, is known. It's never fully been quantified. Sambit Patra saying 8 to 10%. What does your data show you?
Even if I agree with Sambit, the thing is that the skewed voting patterns are extremely risky now as far as the BJP is concerned. We have seen that in Gujarat. We have burnt our fingers in Haryana. Rahul, even after correctly predicting that BJP is leading, having a lead of almost 10-point votes over the Congress, we have seen that BJP could not convert a 10-point lead into a majority for its own in Haryana. So there are patterns which are emerging, new election patterns that are emerging, and Bihar, for any reason, is not different. There are different reasons, but those patterns are pretty much constant. There is a possibility of BJP winning its seats by huge margins, but there is also a possibility of BJP allies losing the seats by very small margins.
Okay, so Sanjay Kumar, is there a way of quantifying the Modi bump? What's your estimate? Minus Modi and with Modi in the fray, how much of a difference would it make to the NDA's fortunes, having the Prime Minister go out and campaign? Sanjay Kumar.
Some facts first, Rahul. We did quantify Modi's bump in 2019 Lok Sabha elections for BJP, and we figured out that every 10 votes which BJP got, 3 votes was entirely of Modi.
But that's in a Lok Sabha election. What happens in an assembly election?
Is much higher in a Lok Sabha election. That is what I'm trying to explain, Rahul. Modi's ability to give a bump to BJP's vote share is much higher in the Lok Sabha election, not that much in the assembly election. So that's one caveat, that his ability to give bump to the NDA's vote or BJP's vote is much lower in the assembly election. It's very difficult at the moment to quantify how much Modi is going to contribute to NDA's vote share. But I think I can say for sure with a lot of confidence that Modi's campaign is not going to add 8 to 10% votes to NDA, but definitely maybe to the extent of 3-4%. So I would just divide it by half what Sambit Patra had mentioned, 8 to 10% vote, divided by 2.5, so and that is the bump.
The cephalogist telling the doctor, "ठीक लगा लो." Dr. Patra, ठीक लगा लो. But I want to show you also what happened in Munger, where politics has erupted in a big way over the firing incident in Munger in which an 18-year-old was killed. Opposition leaders Tejashwi Yadav and Chirag Paswan have attacked Nitish Kumar over these clashes, comparing the Chief Minister to General Dyer and the lathi charge on the devotees to the attack at the Jallianwala Bagh.
A Durga idol immersion ceremony turns violent in Bihar's Munger district. A fierce crackdown follows. The security forces opened fire, leaving 1 dead and at least 30 injured. 2 days later, Munger firing has now sparked a political firestorm. Chirag Paswan, the former NDA ally, who was now a bitter critic of Nitish Kumar, has compared the Chief Minister to General Dyer. Dyer had opened fire on a peaceful meeting in Jallianwala Bagh, killing scores of people in 1919, an incident that changed the course of the freedom struggle.
मुख्यमंत्री जनरल डायर की भूमिका में आ गया. जिस तरीके से जनरल डायर ने जलियांवाला बाग में गोलियां चलाई थी, बेकसूरों को मौत के घाट उतारा था, एग्जैक्टली उसी तरीके से प्रशासन ने निर्दोषों के ऊपर गोलियां चलाई, उनको मारा, लाठियां. आप देखिए किस हालात में हम अस्पताल में जाकर. तो मैं तो मांग करता हूं कि इसकी जांच होनी चाहिए.
The Mahagathbandhan alliance too launched a blistering attack on the Bihar Chief Minister.
कानून व्यवस्था, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर बिहार में पूरी तरीके से चरमरा सी गई. बीजेपी के लोग लॉ एंड ऑर्डर पे सवाल खड़ा करते थे. कहीं ना कहीं से आज वो फंसे हुए हैं और इस पे उनको खुल करके अपनी बात को रखना चाहिए. साथियों, एक बात साफ है कि बिहार में नीतीश कुमार की नहीं, निर्दयी कुमार और निर्मम मोदी की सरकार है.
The BJP, caught on the wrong foot, is demanding high-powered probe into the firing.
जो मुंगेर की घटना हुई, ये इससे बड़ा दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण कुछ नहीं हो सकता. मैं राज्य सरकार से मांग करता हूं, एक उच्च स्तरीय जांच कमेटी बनाए और जो भी दोषी अधिकारी हैं उन पर कड़ी से कड़ी कार्रवाई करे.
As Munger voted in the first phase of polls, the firing during the Durga Puja procession has put Nitish Kumar under pressure. The crackdown that took place so close to the voting didn't give out the ruling party much time to control damage. How it affects the voting remains to be seen. Bureau Report, India Today.
You know, we have access to some of the data from what's happening on the ground, but the EC norms are very, very clear. We can't put that out. So you draw your own conclusions. Listen carefully, listen intently. You will pick up some threads and some signals of what's happening on the ground. But to know the full and true picture, you will need to tune in to the India Today Access My India exit poll on the last and third phase of polling. I want to thank all our guests, Sambit Patra, Pawan Khera, Dr. Naval Kishore, Yashwant Deshmukh and Sanjay Kumar for joining us on the Newstrack. Thank you very much. I'm slipping into a break. I'll have more for you when I come back from the other side. Stay with us.